Come to me. Come to me.
Nosferatu. So this is an interesting one, quite a scary horror, starring Lily Rose Depp as Ellen Hutter, and then Nicholas Hoult as Thomas Hutter, who are like a young married couple. He's an estate agent who's tasked with going to a property to escort Count Orlok to another property in his hometown. And it's a bit of a strange one, really. Ellen, at the start of the film, has this very dreamlike dream in which she's kind of stalked by this vampire of sorts, this Count Orlok, and this is from a young age of hers. And I think it says years later, and it progresses to the present day, but it looks like it could be like 10 years later or 15 years later potentially. And she still has this Count Orlok kind of controlling her in her mind and in her dreams. And then her husband Thomas actually has an encounter with him, and then the rest unfolds. But Alex, what do we know about this film's history without going further?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of Nosferatu, the original in 1922, was obviously it's based on a Bram Stoker's Dracula book. So this is Dracula's story. But in 1922, the German director that did that version of Nosferatu adaptation of the book didn't get authorized by the Stoker family, by the writer's family. So even though he couldn't get authorized, what they decided to do, he said, we're still going to adapt the book, but we're going to make some changes. So they moved the location from London in the book to Wisborg in this film. They changed the names from Count Dracula to Count Orlok, and other things like this to sort of avoid getting sued. They still got sued in 1922 or 1924. This is how far back the original film is, and it's black and white and it's no sound. They still got sued, and the court ordered for all copies of Nosferatu in 1922 to be destroyed. Now, obviously, that didn't happen because back in the day you didn't have any digital, it was all on film. And there are still copies, and you can still watch the original film today. But that sort of persecution, let's call it, and censorship made the original film even more of a cult classic. And this is a reiteration of that. But essentially, you're watching Dracula's story. That's what it is. So if you've seen the 1999 film with Gary Oldman playing Dracula, it's exactly the same thing. That has Keanu Reeves in it and other big actors like that. It's exactly the same story. This is Robert Eggers' reiteration of that story with today's sort of technology, let's call it. But bringing it back to this version in 2025, what did you thought of the way it looks, the film? Because that's what's striking, I believe, first.
So it kind of, it's lots of shades of black and blue, isn't it? Especially the dreamlike sequences in which Ellen in the film has quite a bit. You can't really ever quite tell whether it's reality and these events are happening. When the screen kind of goes to this kind of, say, it's like this kind of this monotone kind of blue that you have, deep water blue, and it looks like everything's lit by moonlight, which I think is a kind of good way of describing it. You don't know if it's reality or if it's her dream sequence or a combination of both. And I think it looks fantastic, actually. I think it looks very good, and it looks very horrific, and it sets the tone very well. I did this film. It kind of like makes you think of older style films, as you say. You mentioned Dracula in terms of horror, doesn't it? And it goes back to that whole, vampire is obsessed with a beautiful woman sort of kind of idea, doesn't it, Alex?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's what I think this is what it's trying to be. It plays a lot with the shadows, which is what the 1922 did. It plays a lot with the characters. You can't see their faces, or dark setups, and it's dirty and muddy and sickly. And the city, when they get to the city, which is supposed to be London, but it's a different one in Nosferatu, it's filled with rats and people dying in the streets, and it's plagued, and it just looks like very medieval and dirty and sickly. And that's exactly what the very first film is. It just goes back to the roots of what a vampire film is, and I really enjoy that. I didn't really actually realize how much I'm missing the vampire, a good vampire film. I haven't seen one in ages. You know, yeah, the story is going to always be the same with some horrifying, nightmare-inducing vampire that is winning all the time. But this is very well put, and it is not this. It's not a lot of blood. There is, but it's not like relying on the gore of a vampire film. It relies on the tension between this Count Orlok, this vampire, coming and approaching, and the shadow coming into the city and following her, and that's scary enough. I found. Did you find the film scary or tensioned or like full of? You know,
I actually found it. Yeah. I mean, dread is a good use of word, but I did actually find it quite scary. You know, there's quite a few jump scares, definitely 100%. But no, I thought they got this quite well. Really, it's very Gothic in nature, isn't it? And I think we were both saying, you know, before we started recording this, that William Dafoe, he just can't pick a normal film to be in, can he? Really, he's always in these kind of like strange films, really. But no, yeah, no, I was quite taken aback, to be truthfully honest with you. And you didn't really talk on.
Did you enjoy the story? The story is, I don't know if it was maybe to you. Have you seen Dracula, the 1999 version?
No.
So, but was this story sort of predictable? Let's call it, to you.
I mean, it seemed a little bit kind of old-fashioned in nature. I wouldn't say predictable. I didn't know what was going to happen. Do you know what I mean? But it almost seemed a bit like, I don't know if you got this, but it seemed a little bit like The Exorcist at one point, with the demon inside of Ellen, kind of, you know, not being able to escape from that. I almost was like, it's like a cross between Dracula and maybe The Exorcist, because her bodily movements, and there's actually like a couple of scenes where her body is, I mean, if that's purely not CGI, that's just impressive from the actress, to be truly honest with you, because that was scary. That are just purely her bodily movements. That was brilliant. But yeah, no, did I enjoy? So yeah, I did. I didn't find it predictable or anything like this. I just found it very kind of, as I say, it's almost like old-fashioned storytelling, isn't it? And I'm not just saying that because of the period it was set in, but you know, it just seemed like a classic vampire movie, not like maybe you'd get today with, you know, your Twilights and so forth and so on. This is a traditional vampire movie where no one is good looking if they're a vampire. You know, Robert Pattinson is not the main role here.
Good, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I think the story was, or lack of changes in the story it's what I didn't like, because it's very faithful to the original, it's very faithful to the book. The story is an age-old story, is a classic, and I was hoping for a little bit more character development in this more modern version. I thought, you know, you could have taken Count Orlok's story into a different direction, not the different, but sort of continue to develop it, because the ending is a classic ending. But you know, what if he survives the daylight, or you know, he's in love, he's obviously in love with Ellen. That's his drama, because who he is and what he is. He's in love with her, and he's like, you know, what if that continues? Or I thought, you know, Thomas's character was a bit one-dimensional, let's call it, bland.
Yeah.
You know, you could have or even William Dafoe, you mentioned, he's struggling between science and religion, because, you know, and that clash could have been developed a bit more. And instead, the film just does. It's almost like an homage, or pays respect in full to the original. And that's it. And then uses the modern techniques of lighting, and doesn't add anything to the lore, to the. That's what I thought. That's what it let me down a little bit.
Yeah, or Friedrich's character, isn't it? Thomas's good friend. You
exactly.
know, maybe he could have been elaborated a bit more. You know, because especially with what happens to his character in the film, he would have an excuse to completely have a role reversal or a change of persona.
Yeah, I think it doesn't. I don't think it reinvents the genre, but I think it's a good addition to it, and I'm going to expect more good vampire films like this to rock up, because this was very popular in cinemas. So yeah. Thank you for watching our review of Nosferatu. If you'd like to see a similarly horrifying film, but back into today's world, please watch our review of Longlegs. Thank you again for subscribing, and we'll see you next week.